Mm, Thank you everyone for joining to this presentation. Uh, uh, I am going to talk about what matters for fertility in Bangladesh, natural disasters or mortality differentials or both. Uh, so you can see in the introduction and background section, there are many thinkers. They already mentioned that there is a complex relationship between natural disasters and fertility. You cannot explain it very simply. And there is another thing with the relationships between natural disasters and fertility. There are mixed findings and mixed effects. Some researchers they found there is the fertility increases after disasters. There is also finding that fertility decreases after natural disasters. So it's just a mixed finding, and it depends on context and situations as well. And we know that natural disasters is connected to child mortality, particularly in developing country, and then child mortality affects also the fertility rate. So that would be good research, and if you examine the relationship between natural disasters and whether the mortality differentials or natural disasters are connected with fertility rates, particularly in developing countries, because many developing countries are highly vulnerable to extreme weather events. Yeah. And in this paper, we try to examine how natural disaster affect total fertility rates, also how types of mortality affect total fertility rates. So we used different types of floods and also different types of mortality, like neonatal mortality, infant mortality, male infant mortality, and under 5 mortality. And also we included contraceptive prevalence rate. So for data and variables, our outcome variable is total fertility rate, and we use the many predictors like total disasters, disaster types, neonatal mortality, infant mortality, male infant mortality, under 5 mortality, and the contraceptive prevalence rate. So we collected data for the period 1960 to 2018, and from EMDAT and also from World Bank, and this data is freely available to download and to do any research. In a statistical analysis, we use the bivariate and multivariate linear regression models. We use the 5 different models, including mortality differentials, different types, and including disaster types and total number of disasters. So we had a separate analysis for individual disasters as well. In the results section, if you look at the table 1, and you can see this is very interesting, is that with the disaster types, extreme temperature, flood, and storm, we can see there's a negative association between total fertility rate and disaster type. But with the mortality differential, we can find a still positive relationship. So that means if infant mortality, male infant mortality, neonatal mortality, and even under 5 mortality rate is high for any country, still it has impact on fertility rates, total fertility rate. But with the contraceptive prevalence rate, we can see there is negative association with total fertility rate. So this inverse relationship in terms of disaster types and mortality differentials. With the disaster types, the relationship is positive, but with the mortality types of mortality, we can see it's a positive relationship. So this is very, complex, whether mortality rate is still influentially affecting total fertility, or and disaster types are still influencing fertility, total fertility rate for Bangladesh. If you see, we have 5 models, and if you see in these models, you can see with total number of disasters, there is a negative association with the total fertility rate. But with model 1, model 2, model 3, model 4, and model 5. Model 1 to model 4, we can see is the mortality types are positively associated, but including total number of disasters, total number of disasters is negatively associated to total fertility rate. That means disaster influence to reduce fertility rate rather than the way the mortality rate has influenced on fertility rate in Bangladesh. But whenever we include the contraceptive prevalence rate, then we find the interesting result is that the contraceptive prevalence rate is negatively associated with total fertility rate, and this is justified, and it was found in different studies. But when we use CPR in the model, then we find that total number of disasters is going to have a positive impact on total fertility rate. This is the mechanism that we need to explore more, and it demands more further studies why it's happening. And if you look at the table 3, we also we find a similar outcome for total fertility rate is that in terms of types of natural disaster like extreme temperature, flood, and storm, we can see there is a negative relationship between each type of disaster and total fertility rate. But with the different types of mortality, there is still a positive relationship with total fertility rate. Is statistically also significant. It's statistically significant, and when if we include contraceptive prevalence rate, then we also find that the storm is statistically significant, and it has a positive impact on total fertility rate. This is also important finding. So because in Bangladesh, the country faces different types of natural disasters like floods, which is very frequent, but there's also a storm, it happens, and the impact of the storm is very severe in different regions. So we don't know whether with the flooding, the storm might have positive impact in particular regions. So if we do regional, if you look at the regional variations with the detailed data, then we may explore why storm has a significant and positive impact on total fertility rate. So, in conclusion, we can say that extreme temperature and flood, it has negative effects on fertility rates. Then storms and extreme temperatures and floods. We can say that it's going to affect the decline in TFR, and it can make a regional variation across the different administrative districts in Bangladesh. However, it is also found that increasing storms, so maybe in coastal areas they face a storm, it may influence to increase total fertility rate, and it may be due to unavailability or unplanned contraception or pregnancies and unavailable contraception. And maybe married couples, they might have access to contraceptive due to the emergency situation, like due to storms and flooding. So another way we can why child mortality is going to affect positively on TFR, because maybe people in Bangladesh still consider having more children as an insurance, and it is against child mortality, as still there is infant mortality, child mortality, and even neonatal mortality. So with the increasing, with the increasing severity and frequency of different types of natural disasters, particularly flooding and storms in Bangladesh, we can say it's going to impact on child mortality. And this child mortality, though we did not use mortality types as a mediating variable with a disaster, we want to see disasters separately, and then also the types of child mortality and we included its types of disasters and child mortality, and we wanted to see how these types of whether it's mortality type or the disaster type is going to influence negatively or positively on total fertility rate. So we can say that child mortality and total fertility rate and can slow the total fertility, the declining TFR in Bangladesh, and declining fertility in Bangladesh. The contraceptive prevalence rate is statistically significant, and it is one of the significant determinant in declining fertility in Bangladesh. So thank you all. If you have any question, and please ask me and feel free to ask me questions. Okay, thank you.